My name is Alicia Shapiro with AInews.com, and welcome to another episode of our Driving Tomorrow, Conversations with Industry Leaders, where we explore the latest developments and newest innovations in the world of artificial intelligence. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Adam Bennett, CEO, and Austin Hochstedler, CTO, co-founders of SureStack, an AI-native cybersecurity platform that just launched with the bold mission to tackle one of the most persistent and overlooked challenges in the industry, misconfigurations. While most AI and cyber conversations focus on detecting threats after they happen, SureStack takes a different approach, making sure that your security stack is actually configured to stop attacks before they start. And built on their patent-pending resilient intelligence, SureStack combines generative AI, expert knowledge, and real-time analysis to help defenders stay ahead of vulnerabilities. With features like live configuration monitoring, adversarial attack simulations, and an AI assistant called StackChat, SureStack isn't replacing your security tools, it's making them bulletproof. In today's conversation, we'll explore why misconfigurations remain a critical blind spot, how SureStack addresses them from the inside out, and why the future of AI and cybersecurity must go beyond detection to deliver real continuous protection. So I really appreciate you joining us today, Adam and Austin.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Glad to be here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad to have you both here. I'm really looking forward to our talk today. And congratulations on the launch of SureStack. And for those who haven't seen the news, can you give us a quick overview of what the platform does and what makes it different?
Sure. Thanks again. Basically, we're tackling this problem of configuration assurance, and organizations have what we call a security stack. So you've got firewalls, you've got endpoint security, you've got SIEM, you've got vulnerability tools, you've got cloud security tools. There's any number of security tools in your tool belt or stack. The problem, though, is let's say maybe you have a really tight configuration, and today everything's perfect. Not likely, by the way, but let's just say that for the sake of argument that you have a perfectly configured security stack. There's the concept of change and there's concept of entropy, right? Joe might open the firewall on a Friday night and forget to close it, for example. Or maybe your endpoint product breaks something and someone doesn't do a change request, they just make a change. Maybe that configuration you actually needed to stop an attack. So those are just a few examples. So our solution is connecting to the tools in your security stack through API, and then it's using a combination of basically our human expertise, standards like CIS benchmarks and others, and industry best practices from the vendors, and then a combination of that and generative AI to make recommendations. Okay, hey, you have this vulnerability, you have a vulnerable version of this, you have a misconfiguration here. And then we're focusing those with quick wins, so where engineers can actually get to the root of things quickly and make decisions on how they can reduce risk more quickly. And SureStack was built by network defenders. We have 20 plus years of experience in the industry. So we basically try to help reduce that risk, get the best ROI out of your stack, but also make the lives of network defenders easier. It's really this whole holistic approach, and I'll get into that a little bit later. Austin, did I miss anything there?
Yeah, and I think all of what Adam said, and it's all backed by an artificial intelligence agent that we have called StackChat, and that's able to correlate all of the data from your security tools, your standard operating procedures, your documentation that you have for your internal workflows, and able to help as a resource identify gaps and provide information on the fly about your environment. And it can be queried live and assist in giving you specifics on how to remediate these findings and much more in the future.
I love that. Why do you think misconfigurations in security tools and infrastructure are so overlooked in AI cybersecurity conversations?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what Adam was saying. There's change and entropy, but there's also the complexity of you got multiple tools and they all have so many different knobs and buttons and things you can change. And I'll give you an example. I was frustrated with my wife's car because every time you would go to do keyless entry, I had my hands full. You could go up to the doorknob on the front and that had the keyless sensor, but the rear ones didn't if we're putting the kids in the car or whatever. And so when I went to touch that, it would only unlock the door that I touched. It wouldn't unlock the rear. So I had to dig through the settings in the menu and go down and find the setting that said, hey, you touch the keyless entry, then all the doors unlock. And I realized going through the settings, oh, there's a lot of things you can change and fiddle around on this car. A single security tool, most of them are far more complicated than the settings that you can change in your car to optimize it for your day to day. And there's a complexity there. And it goes back to there's also a defender's dilemma inside of security where you have a lot of people and you've got a SOC engineering team and you've got this guy might be really well versed and dedicated to your endpoint tools, but he might not know that much about firewalls. And you're going to have diverse skill sets within the teams. And something that this allows us to bridge the gap so that you have knowledge of all these different tools and types of security measures you put in place so that everyone can have a better understanding and quickly adjust to being able to make these things. And so some of the configurations are just, these things are complex and they may not have been put together exactly correctly out of the box. You have changes that get made, things change, something was opened up, and yeah, we'll fix that later. There's a million different reasons due to the complexity and the fast moving environments of different businesses where you're going to have these misconfigurations and you need constant checks. I've worked inside SOC engineering teams, and when you have an MSSP and you have several different customers and there's daily workflows where you go in and make sure, everything's good and you recheck your baseline and you recheck your baseline, and you recheck your baseline. And this is something that tool directly addresses. And I think that defenders will find it greatly beneficial.
I think that makes sense. And we often hear about how AI is being used for threat detection or phishing defense, but not as much about securing the underlying infrastructure in itself. What kind of risks does that create?
Yeah. So I think a couple things there. So first of all, I think AI is really good at like anything having to do with a lot of data. It's really good there. So I think phishing detection and data analysis and some of those other things were quick wins to borrow from our own solution there in terms of use cases for AI and cyber. What we're doing with SureStack is not 100% AI, right? So we're combining our human expertise and standards with what AI can do in the context. But I think it's a combination of maybe there were some easier use cases first, with also just the complexity of it. And so I think that's part of it. And what Austin was talking about with the complexity is true. And it's not just cybersecurity tools, it's also infrastructure, SaaS solutions and other things like that. They also have a lot of, I call it knobs and twists, a lot of options, like what Austin is talking about. You have to dig through 8 different things to find what you're looking for. To me, that's, again, it's a trade-off. That might be very powerful. However, that itself is what sometimes creates the vulnerability because it's not intuitive as to exactly what you need to change and what the impact of that change is. And then if you change something, maybe you meant to change it back later. So I think it's a combination of things.
That makes sense. And you described SureStack as being built on top of your patent pending resilient intelligence. Can you explain more about what that means in practice and how it sets your approach apart from other AI driven cybersecurity tools?
Sure, I'll take that first and then I'll see what Austin has to add on. But really, what we're talking about here with resilient intelligence is a holistic system that we're combining the power of years of experience, human expertise, standards, and best practices. And then what we can do with Gen AI is, and we're creating a resilient system that's got the full context of everything you have, all of your security tool controls. And it's got a level of intelligence about your stack, your security stack and controls that really hasn't been possible before. And the intelligence is really provided by the solution as a whole and the generative AI. And the resilient aspect is, look, we're really tying together, really stitching together everything in your security stack to make it work together. And for that C-suite, for that CISO, or for that security engineer, whoever, to be able to really have a good, solid handle on, okay, I can go to sleep tonight because I know that these things are configured optimally. Austin?
I think the resilience piece too there is exactly what Adam just went through, but constantly. When you have a pen test or you have an audit and someone comes in and checks all your stuff and makes sure that things are configured properly, you got the right things in place, that's a snapshot. That happens once, and then tomorrow someone might change something again. And it may be another 3, 6 months, a year before you do another one of those. And that whole time, if you don't have the constant coverage to make sure that, these holes aren't being poked inside of what you have for your security stack, that's where the resilience piece of that artificial intelligence comes in. It's a constant check, and everything, the nails are always going to be looked at and nailed down.
Yeah, I think that's super smart. And that actually leads me into my next question, because one stat that really stood out to me was 99% of firewall breaches come from misconfigurations. And you were just talking about the complexity of the snapshot is great for that one instant moment, but it could change the next day. So why do you think this remains such a persistent challenge, even from well-funded organizations?
Yeah. So I would say number one, because humans are managing them,
Okay.
but there's the complexity aspect. Now, firewalls, at the end of the day, they're not the most complex piece of gear or tool or solution in your security stack. They're blocking traffic in and out. Although it's not like the early days, right? So now you've got maybe some web content filtering in there. Some of the firewalls they can do full packet capture. They can actually decrypt data and then run an anti-malware scan on it. There are actually a lot more knobs and twists. There's more complexity than there used to be. So that's a couple of reasons. Lack of automation. Again, if someone makes a change, lack of proper change in configuration management. And there's also the aspect of, again, entropy, right? So I've been in organizations within the one in particular I'm thinking about in DoD, where there's a very large building that you don't want to drop traffic going in and out of that building. So these firewalls are, sometimes there's dozens and dozens of rules.
Oh.
And sometimes you may see rules, and so you put something in place, but then over time it gets messier, the entropy thing. So you may even have rules that aren't even being used anymore. So you have to go and clean those out. So a long drawn out way of saying there's a couple of reasons why, and it really transcends this. You hit on it. It transcends the size of the organization. It gets worse on the larger side, actually. There are some options for if you have a lot of firewalls for centralized management, but they don't really, I think, solve the problem truly. Austin?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Adam said. Larger organizations that do have much more resources to spend on this, but the old saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. The more traffic you got going in and out, and the more things you have to configure for that firewall, the more complex the rule set is. And you open up a firewall configuration, and I've seen hundreds and hundreds of rules in this list. And it's, as a human being, it'll take me a very long time to go through each one of those and make sure everything's good. Hey, who put this in? Why is it there? What resources need this in here? And that's something that AI can take in its totality immediately and give you feedback directly in the way that we integrate with those firewalls. If that can give you that insight, then you can take it and ask it, hey, what's this rule for? Those things are something that large organizations and small organizations alike can benefit from. And that's just one sliver of the pie, so to speak, with what we'll be able to do with this product.
That's amazing. But it still boggles my mind that even some of the larger, more well-funded organizations are just leaving their cybersecurity vulnerable. That just boggles my mind. And like you said, the bigger they are, the harder they're going to fall. So,
Yeah, even they deal with this challenge that we have of lack of resources. And again, I've been in organizations where, some of these firewalls with these hundreds of rules, the people that manage those are very valuable, because sometimes it takes that person who's worked on it for a few years to fix a problem. And the longer they run, the more these challenges persist. If that person, something happens to them, or they win the lottery, or they quit, then you got a big problem.
yeah. Can you walk us through how SureStack identifies and validates misconfigurations in real time? And how does it integrate with existing security tools? Because you said you could build on top of companies' existing tools. So how does that work? And what frameworks or standards guide that process behind the scenes?
Sure. So we integrate with the tools. The goal of this is to be as non-intrusive as possible, right? So we don't install anything. We don't put anything inside the environment that's required for the way we integrate. Most tools that we integrate with, we leverage the APIs that are available. And so that allows us to set the interval. It's very simple to set up. You go into the management page, you put in the API information, you point it to the device, or in the case of something like CrowdStrike, where you have a cloud console, you point it to the region, and it pulls all that information instantaneously and constantly for those tools that it integrates with. There are some things where it may be a little bit more complicated. We've built out things that may directly access a database for certain tools, but for the most part, we're leveraging APIs to do this. As far as frameworks and standards that we use, this is where the secret sauce of what we build comes together, in that we combine the experience that we have working in the field, as long as we have, with the frameworks and standards that, whether it's CIS or NIST or whatever we're using, to create these baselines for the recommended configurations that we're using. And so those are the base for all these tools that we plug into. And then our combined experience, like I had mentioned, will also be looking at rules that go even further beyond what those baselines from lessons learned and things that we've taken in the past.
Yeah, definitely the CIS and the NIST are the primary ones right now, and then the vendor recommendations in our experience. And I think the other part of the question, were you asking about how we can help with that, address those, or like examples of vulnerabilities that we found? So, that some examples are, we talked about the firewalls getting compromised. You're saying, yeah, that stat kind of shocks that many.
Yeah.
An example, and this happened last year with one of the firewalls that we integrate with, but it happened with actually two of them. There were, I don't have the numbers, but I know there were probably hundreds at least of firewalls that were compromised because there was a vulnerability in the operating system which, in and of itself is not a problem if you have the firewall configured properly and you have it locked down so that you can only manage it from trusted known source IPs. Well, these hundreds of firewalls were not. They were wide open, and so anyone could hit them. And so therefore, the vulnerability was able to be exploited. And so those firewalls were compromised. And in this case, that firewall has a packet capture capability. So those firewalls were basically, then they could get a full packet capture of whatever data was going through them. They could decrypt it. They could get anything. So it's a nightmare scenario in terms of what security tool you'd most not like to have compromised. That's an example. We didn't find this with SureStack, although if it had been in this environment, we would have. During a pen test recently, another thing, we had found a default username and password for a firewall for SSH, an admin. So that was shocking, but sometimes these things happen. And so we would find that I can give you another example. This is something that I recall from a past company that we were doing an incident response. And once we got through the whole thing and we wrote up everything. And ultimately, we found that they had a really advanced endpoint security product, but they didn't have all of the, I think, advanced features turned on. And there was one or two features in particular that were not enabled that we actually, when we went through and our malware analyst looked at everything and forensics and everything, there was this one box that if they had checked it, if they had configured it, in other words, if they were getting the full ROI from their solution, they would not have had this incident. And it cost them a chunk of change. And SureStack will definitely solve for that type of thing as well.
That's awesome. How does SureStack actually block those before the damage is done? Like, how does that work?
We don't block them. We would just give the organization a heads up, like, hey, you have this problem. Now, and in our interface, we have something called quick wins. These are like critical high, medium low type of thing. So criticals and highs would float up to these quick wins. So you could actually literally go into StackChat and it'll pre-populate this quick wins and you can just click on it and it'll tell you how to fix that exactly, step by step.
Do you get alerts? Like,
yeah, we have alerting through
happening?
We have alerts through email, and we're going to add Slack and Teams. We don't put too many details in there because it's email, but we have an alert. Hey, you have a critical finding in this integration. You go in and check it out. Now, eventually, there will be some options to fix some of these things in a more automated way, but that's down the line. We don't have that today.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we mentioned StackChat. How does it help teams reduce the alert fatigue or onboard new members faster and stay ahead of evolving threats?
StackChat will, alert fatigue, maybe you think of it specifically inside of AI looking through a SIM tool or something where you get a lot of information coming in, but There is a fatigue in a sense of the constant pruning and tuning and checking and double checking all of your stack configurations. And that takes a lot of time. It takes time from all the way from your junior guys to the senior guys to make sure that everything stays in the place that it's supposed to be. And so that's going to alleviate the fatigue from your security teams so they can take their time that they would have spent maybe an hour or two making sure things are good and reporting on it and documenting it and making sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. Now they can focus on the things that really need to be done outside of the baseline configurations and tools. As far as onboarding new members faster, this is a key benefit of this AI solution that we have. And one problem that we have is, one, we don't have enough defenders. And two, when you get someone new to the organization, you get a junior analyst or engineer, or even someone who may actually have some experience and be well trained, it can take easily 6 months inside of a large, complex organization before you even get a grasp on how things operate and who's who and what's what. And although there's a lot of institutional knowledge that goes in there. And so StackChat, you're able to upload organizational documentation, standard operating procedures, your different components of what makes your organization function, all that documentation that you keep internally, and so that you can train the next guys. And it will be available to be queried, asked about, access for any member of the team. And so typically you're going to have a lot of time taken away from your senior operators and engineers that are going to be taking their time to show the ropes to the new people. And StackChat can act as a buffer, and in some cases, even a competent replacement for certain functions where, if you need to know something about one of your clients, or if you're in a large enterprise network, how certain things operate, who owns this resource? So what do we do when this happens? How do things function here? That's something that StackChat can answer immediately, and you don't have to go taking away time from managers or senior people to address those. And so new people can get spun up a lot faster for how the organization operates by leveraging StackChat to be able to answer questions like that. And it can provide a guide for making changes. If you task a new person with something in a tool that they're not super familiar with, StackChat, included in the information that we provided, it's augmented with the knowledge of these tools and the way that they function and the nitty-gritty of each setting, and it will spit out step-by-step instructions on here's how you get from A to B with some of these simple changes that you can do. And I think all of that together, that keeps you one step ahead in evolving threats in two ways. One, like I said at the beginning, you're freeing up resources from your guys to do something that has to be done constantly. And they can take those efforts and put them into cycles and put them into other more active things inside the environment so that you can catch those evolving threats, those 0 days and those bad guys that are doing things new. And then on top of that, as we continue to roll out the product, and it's going to be improved, and the knowledge base of it is going to continue to be updated, and it's going to be more knowledgeable of the things that are out there and the active threats and the way how to secure your stack against them.
I think you nailed it, Austin. The only thing I would say is I just think of it as like a virtual cybersecurity assistant. You can ask it anything really to make, as a defender, to make your job easier, to make your life easier, to troubleshoot something, get advice. You can even put a network diagram in there and ask it, hey, based on this and everything else, what do you think about our security architecture? What should we change? What should we be thinking about? And it'll handle it pretty well.
I love that. For CISOs who are trying to communicate the value to their board, how can tools like SureStack help tie configuration assurance to ROI and risk reduction?
So I think first, it's going to identify vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that your team may have missed, but it's not going to, like Austin said, it's not going to do that once. It's going to do that every day. It doesn't need a break. It's working for you all the time. So I think that's huge. It's a paradigm shift, frankly, I think. And again, so do you have any burning fires? Number one, do you have RDP open to the internet? Are you going to get owned today? Yeah. Okay. Yes, no, whatever. Maybe not. But again, that could change, right? And then also beyond that, getting into the ROI is, are you taking advantage of all of the power that is, again, we talked about that trade-off earlier between complexity and being able to manage these things. So are you taking full advantage of everything that you should be in these solutions? And so there is a compliance aspect too with the frameworks like CIS. Are you compliant with that? But even though above and beyond that, based on our expertise and the vendors' recommendations, and the context that the AI provides and having it all work together. I think that's where the ROI really comes into play. And that's an important discussion. That was another thing we really thought about even before. I think that's cutting costs is certainly the topic of the day, but for a lot of reasons. But again, I think that's been the case for a while. Even if you're not trying to cut costs, you want to get the best you can, and you want to avoid those scenarios, like I mentioned earlier, about having an incident happen because you're not taking advantage of something that you've already paid for. Yeah.
And I think to add to what Adam said, that as far as risk reduction goes, part of what the tool provides is a window for C-level or management inside the organization to see what is the status of the environment right now. And so, again, it goes back to leveraging resources and opening cycles. Instead of going to your people and saying, and spending their time on saying, hey, I need a status report on this, you can go to the dashboard and you can see it. You can generate a report and see where you were and how far you've come as you've implemented these recommendations. And as far as ROI goes, everything Adam said is true, but it's also very simple to convey to the C-level suite. You paid a lot of money for these tools.
Yeah.
You bought the licensing, you went through the effort of installing it, you paid people to put it in place. And if this tool, you plug it in and it tells you exactly how to squeeze as much value as you can out of them, it's a no-brainer. This is something to add on top of it, and you're going to have a much better security stack than if you didn't.
Oh, for sure. I agree with that. And as AI continues to evolve, how do you see its role expanding beyond detection and response into areas like continuous validation and stack optimization?
Yeah, so I think that AI, more broadly speaking, is reaching into different domains, and we're exploring what the possibilities it can do. There's knowledge management tools that people have built. There's things for law firms and paralegals. There's all kinds of different things that people are using it right now for detection and response, and that there are ways that you can leverage these things to do very powerful stuff. And so I think as it continues to evolve, it's only going to get smarter about how well it's going to have an understanding of connecting all these dots within your organization and the configurations that you have, where are your gaps, what kind of context it can have to understand where the problems are. And I think we have put our time and effort into building this product to be. AI is only as strong as the arms and legs that you build it right now. That's currently the limitation. It can't spin up these integrations on its own and do it. And all of the context and information, we're evolving as AI is evolving so that it can be smarter, and we're providing it the context and the ability that it needs to be able to do what we're setting out to do with this product.
Finally, for security leaders who feel like maybe their stack is already good enough, what would you say that they risk by not continuously validating and optimizing their configurations?
First of all, I would say, hey, why don't you do a trial? I'll give you a free trial of SureStack if you really think that. And again, I think that could be the case today, but it might not be the case tomorrow or in 60 days or in 120 days. So it's definitely, or when someone leaves the organization. So I think the risk is quite severe, especially the more complex the environment, the more places you're housing your data, whether that's on-prem or different versions of SaaS, and all of the software that you have and the security tools in your stack, all those things. The more of those things that you've got, I think the more risk there is over time. We can help with that.
I love that.
And I think most people in the industry, the guys that have been in there for a long time, there may be some attitude of things are good enough, but cybercrime continues to rise, the threats continue to explode. And I think most people in the industry, they're going to know there's no such thing as good enough.
Yeah.
More eyes and more checks and better optimization I think it's going to be welcome. I think people will see the vision and they'll really see what we're trying to do and the value that we can add with this product.
That's important advice because you mentioned this earlier. Just as the bad actors have AI and they're constantly evolving just as fast as the good AI is evolving, you just need to try to stay that one step ahead of the people who are using AI to do harm. So that's important advice.
Exactly.
Thanks so much, Adam and Austin, for sharing how SureStack is helping security teams take back control. It's been an important conversation, and I really hope people pay attention. And for security leaders who are navigating complex stacks, this conversation is also a great reminder that now's the time to validate, optimize, and stay one step ahead. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And if anyone would like to learn more about SureStack, you can simply visit their website, SureStack.ai. Keeping you connected to tomorrow today, this is Alicia with AInews.com.